Part 52. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mishita De. Chapter 512. They exist for themselves. Once he fails, the next lord who bears the karma may receive another form of karma protection. However, it is almost impossible to be the fallen empire that Gao Qiang saw. Seeing that Gao Qiang already understood what he meant, Eternal waved away the long river of time and pulled himself in front of Gao Qiang. He controlled Liu Guang's body and raised two fingers. It's not like you don't have many options. Now you have only two ways to go. As he spoke, Yang Heng pointed forward, and a huge incense burner suddenly appeared only a few dozen meters away from Gao Qiang. This is one of them, Eternal explained. You only need to cross the long river of time and go there, and you can plant 3 pillars of incense by burning everything in yourself. The power of the incense will re-strengthen the temple of time and bind us here for a short period of time. As he spoke, he pointed to the infinite echo piled up like a mountain of garbage in the long river of time next to him. After you die, your power will fall there and continue to protect the next lord chosen by cause and effect. This is almost a step-by-step teaching method, which not only represents eternity, but also shows the attitude of the Time Lords. They don't care at all what Gao Qiang can do. Whether it is strengthening the seal on them, or continuing to strengthen the power left for future generations. Nothing is considered a threat by them. What about the other way? Gao Qiang asked. Another way. Eternity points behind Gao Qiang. Gao Qiang turned his head and saw that a vortex slowly opened 3 steps behind him. Because the incense in the temple of time is about to burn out. So we can now leave this temple to a certain extent. You can always go back to that game if you want. Eternal made a promise to Gao Qiang, if you go back to that game, you will never see us again as long as you are still alive. At the same time, you can take away anything left by your ancestors in the long river of time. They won't need it in the future anyway. You can't use it. What do you mean? Gao Qiang couldn't help interrupting Yang Heng. Eternal nature had no intention of keeping it a secret and told another secret without any worries. The curse once issued by the master of cause and effect contains a condition. When the power of cause and effect is weak to a certain extent, if the Lord who comes through cause and effect still cannot defeat us and chooses to escape, the cause and effect will be cut off. Gao Qiang suddenly understood, in other words, once I choose to return to the war game now. So even if I die in the future, there will never be another Lord chosen by cause and effect, right? Yes, you are so smart for once, Eternal boasted without hesitation. At the same time he added something more. Don't think that escaping is a bad outcome. We don't regard you as our enemy. If you choose to go back, you will take everything you have gained from the long river of time and become the only true God. In all the worlds of war games, there will be no one who can compete with you. You can do whatever you want according to your ideas. Until your time is over. Having said this, Eternity stopped, quietly waiting for Gao Qiang's choice. Wei Meng also looked at Gao Qiang and murmured in a low voice. High strength. Under everyone's gaze, Gao Qiang was at war with heaven and man in his heart. To move forward is to cross the long river of time, and there will be no recovery. To retreat is to take away everything left by the ancestors, and under the condition that time promises never to interfere with oneself, one can become a true God as he pleases in the remaining time. This choice is very easy for anyone to make, right? However, Gao Qiang thought of the last few words Zinke said to him before entering the temple of time. You are like the most fragile flower in the greenhouse. You have to be under our care to get where you are today. But even so, I am willing to respect your next choice. Is this the choice Zinke is talking about now? Pictures flashed through Gao Qiang's mind. When he was most confused and frightened, Shasha took him to a lively bonfire dinner, which dispelled the coldness in his heart. When the gods attacked, he was wrapped in black dumplings in his body to avoid the gods' attacks. I basked in the sun with everyone on the deck, and also bombarded the Pan-Ocean Free Trade Company's sea fortress. There are too many more. Smiling faces flashed before Gao Qiang's eyes. It is actually very easy to retreat. He only needs to take 3 steps back, which is the real ladder to the gods. As for the price of becoming the only true god, all Gao Qiang had to do was to give up the cause and effect formed by a strange lord and time. He knew that no one would blame him for this. But with only 3 steps behind him, Gao Qiang couldn't move his legs. He also knows that he is not a strong person. He does not have the countless great powers that he can unleash with every move, nor does he have a huge empire that he has built with his own hands, nor does he have the wisdom and knowledge to surpass everyone else. He just thought that maybe for once, he wouldn't let everyone down. Of course, Gao Qiang didn't want to just turn into firewood, become the incense that bound time, and become one of the countless losers. In silence, Gao Qiang suddenly asked, I actually have a third way to go, right? Defeat you. Strictly speaking, there is no such option, Yang Heng corrected directly. There is no way to destroy time. In other words, if time is really lost, then you, including all existence in your memory, will lose meaning. After there is no time, the world will be frozen in a moment, and you will never reach the next second of your victory. Because at the 0th second of your victory, there is no progress. Gao Qiang felt bitter. Cannot be killed, perhaps it is true as Yang Heng said, time cannot be defeated. However, how can we know if we don't try? From the confrontation with eternity in the Age of Revelation, it can be seen that even the Time Lord sees a variety of futures. Otherwise, eternity at that time would not have needed to restart the timeline countless times just to find the future in which Gao Qiang was killed. Because of eternity, Gao Qiang also gained a special prop specifically for time. Thinking of this, Gao Qiang suddenly took out a key. Key of civilization. Introduction, a symbol of friendship with the evil of civilization. If you don't plan to make her into meatballs, then your friendship can last for a long, long time. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 513. At the moment when the key of civilization was taken out, countless gray spores began to emerge. Seeing this, eternity and paradox flashed back to the long river of time. Well, after all, this is your choice, eternity said mercilessly. In a short period of time, the gray spores summoned by the key of civilization began to expand rapidly. He seemed to be trying to occupy this temple of time. After seeing this scene, Gao Qiang heard the flowing light figure above the long river of time and began to whisper again. Is it the product of the destruction of civilization itself? Something condensed by resentment, despair, and the purest evil. That's why we can't understand the meaning of civilization's existence. Even if we don't interfere with them, they will eventually destroy themselves. We just simply prevent them from involving us. I really don't know why those civilizations think that the biggest obstacle to their survival is us, when they themselves are. Although the spores of the evil of civilization are still expanding. But the Time Lords on the long river of time did not seem to regard it as a big deal. Seeing this scene, Gao Qiang frowned slightly. The evil of civilization that can harm time, do they really not feel threatened by this? At this time, as the number of spores increased, a feminine figure gradually emerged among them. She was the existence that once killed Paradox. It was the embodiment of the evil thoughts of civilization, focusing on bringing destruction to time, the purest evil. However, just when that figure was about to condense successfully in front of Gao Qiang, the entire civilization key suddenly shattered, turning into a gray-white particle and scattered away. In the end, nothing was left. How could it be, like this? Gao Qiang stared at the scene in a daze, his eyes a little dull. The evil of civilization that he had placed high hopes on did not even have a chance to appear. On the long river of time, Eternity spoke with some pity and answered Gao Qiang's doubts. Don't forget that it is time that creates civilization. The evil of civilization with the purest malice is nothing more than the product of civilization's self-destruction. And in this long river of time, we can erase the history of civilization at any time. If civilization has never existed, there will naturally be no evil left after civilization's self-destruction. After saying that, Yang Heng's face without facial features looked straight at Gao Qiang. I said, you only have two ways to go, forward or backward. No effort of yours can create a third way. Who said that? Yimen's voice suddenly sounded. She suddenly interrupted, staring at Yang Heng with a smile on her lips. Did you mention it just now? It was time that created civilization. Yes, Yang Heng replied lightly. Yimen slowly walked past Gao Qiang and walked forward, with a growing smile on her face. Thank you for reminding me. I understand one thing. For us dream weavers, thousands of years are just a dream. It seems that your time is no more noble than our concept of dream weavers. As if he had figured it out, every time Yimen said a word, the picture in the temple of time changed a little. When Yimen finished speaking, the interior of the temple of time had changed drastically. Countless dense spider webs spread in the void, covering the long river of time. Although he knew that Yimen's combat power had a large variance, Gao Qiang did not expect that her combat power could be exaggerated to the current level. As the dream created by Yimen eroded the temple of time step by step, those Time Lords standing on the long river of time seemed to be trapped by spider webs if they moved at all. Looking at the countless Time Lords who were just full of disdain, they were now trapped in the dream web they wove like flying insects. The smile on Yimen's face became more and more intense. Thanks to Eternal's words, she woke up. Isn't the so-called years just a big dream? Yimen, I seem to like this new name. Then hurry up and end it all. At this moment, Yimen looked at the Time Lords with disdain. Can't win. Then you and the years of your life will stay in this dream forever. Never, wake up. As he said, Yimen waved his hand, and more spider webs emerged from the void, trying to wrap up the entire river of time. However, at this moment, Gao Qiang felt something was wrong. On the surface, Yimen now has an absolute advantage. But those Time Lords still let Yimen do everything now, without even a little reaction or action. It was as if in their eyes, what Yimen was doing now was just another performance of the clown. It would not bring any threat to them, let alone make them feel afraid. Gao Qiang's feeling was confirmed in the next moment. As the dream net created by the legacy dream gradually covered the long river of time, countless firepower suddenly swept out from it. The powerful firepower directly tore the net created by the legacy dream apart, revealing the scene behind the net. In the long river of time, soldiers and warships continued to pour out. Their number was almost endless, but they stood firmly in front of the Lord of Time. Perhaps I need to introduce them, Yang Heng said. He stretched out a finger and pointed at the almost endless warriors. Do you remember the lives you killed directly or indirectly before you came to infinity? Yes, they are standing here now. What you see now are all the enemies that your countless ancestors, including you, have killed. Although they are dead, they were awakened from the long river of time with their unwillingness at the time of death. As he said that, Yang Heng laughed out loud. The cause and effect owed by your countless ancestors are now piled on you. Can this be another reason why you can't win? Gao Qiang looked at Yimen at this time, only to see Yimen shaking her head palely. For Yimen, she almost saw the hope of victory just now. But now that countless hostile beings have been awakened from the long river of time, Yimen realized how wrong she was. There is no hope at all, no hope of victory. To win the victory over time, she and Gao Qiang first have to face not even the Time Lord himself, but the debt owed by Gao Qiang's countless ancestors. Those who once came to the infinite battlefield were all so proud, revealing such a brilliant light. Therefore, most of those who can be killed by them are not ordinary people. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 514. Among them, Wet Dream has experienced more than one existence and civilization that can pose a threat to itself. Those guys may be weaker than their more powerful predecessors. Even the powerful ancestors may have been able to defeat them step by step under the protection of cause and effect. Now these enemies are all gathered together. How could Gao Qiang, who entered the Temple of Time with nothing, be their opponent? No, not just high strength. Wet dreams have been defined. Even if Karma chooses other lords in the future, it is absolutely impossible to win this war. Gao Qiang, come with me. Wei Meng suddenly used a trace of fear in Gao Qiang's heart to sneak up to Gao Qiang's side. She grabbed Gao Qiang's wrist and wanted to drag Gao Qiang backward. Let's go back to the game. Then the power of cause and effect is destined to fail. You can't sacrifice yourself for something that is bound to fail. Snap. Under Wei Mei's disbelieving gaze, Gao Qiang gently patted her hand away. Leave yourself. Gao Qiang raised his head and looked across the river of time, where the incense burner was. Since he can't defeat time, then, maybe he should. Just like the ancestors who protected him along the way, he burned everything he had to protect the next generation. After I burn out, you should be free again, Gao Qiang said softly. Are you crazy? Wei Meng asked in disbelief as she watched Gao Qiang walking forward step by step. Now that the dream she had woven about the Temple of Time has not been completely broken, she can clearly feel the fear in Gao Qiang's heart. But she doesn't understand. Since you are afraid, since you will fail, since it is meaningless, why do it? At this moment, facing Gao Qiang who was slowly moving forward. The countless warriors who emerged in the long river of time did not move. Although Gao Qiang is involved in cause and effect with them, although they wake up from the long river of time just to deal with Gao Qiang. But when Gao Qiang decided to sacrifice himself, his courage was still worthy of their respect. However, this makes no sense. Seeing Gao Qiang cross dozens of steps and walk in front of the incense burner, the Time Lords showed sarcasm. That's why they can't understand civilization. It seems that civilization and the products of civilization like to do unnecessary things, such as self-destruction, and the current high strength. Obviously Gao Qiang only needs to take 3 steps back to have the most perfect ending and life. So what's the point of him going forward to face a doomed failure? Stand in front of the incense burner. Gao Qiang turned around, glanced at the wet dream in the distance, and then glanced at the countless enemies and Time Lords on the river of time. So, is he still defeated? We've come to the worst possible outcome. Perhaps he never had any hope of victory in the first place. With a heavy sigh, Gao Qiang slowly touched the incense burner. But just when he was about to touch the incense burner, Gao Qiang's hand suddenly stopped. He eventually got scared. What does death feel like? After touching this incense burner, will he turn into nothingness and no longer be able to feel anything in the outside world? Thinking of this, Gao Qiang still hesitated. Lord. In a daze, Gao Qiang seemed to hear Zhuoluo calling in his ear. If your lord really encounters any trouble that cannot be solved, don't forget that we are still behind you. Is Zhuoluo coming? Gao Qiang looked at both sides of his body. There was no one standing beside him. Also, Gao Qiang suddenly remembered that these words were what Zhuoluo said to him when he said goodbye for the last time. This may be the reappearance of the memory before death. Perhaps. Thinking of the concept of existence of Zhuoluo and others, Gao Qiang suddenly took back his hand and took out the infinite echo created by Gao Yuan and others from his clothes. Can you protect me one last time? He is looking forward to it, hoping that everyone can wake up like before and turn the tide. But Gao Qiang is destined to be disappointed. There's no movement on infinite echoes. Just as Gao Yuan said, the karma between them and Gao Qiang had been severed when they opened the door to the Temple of Time. Seeing this, Gao Qiang gritted his teeth and used his miraculous power. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Introduction. What is a miracle? Distortion is also a miracle. You cannot tolerate the appearance of strange sounds, so you gain the power to twist your mind. Effect 1. Every time you enter a game, you will get 10 building potential marks. Effect 2. When you issue an order or request, you can activate the edict ability. If the other party's subjective wish is to refuse, then according to the other party's degree of resistance and the gap in combat power between you and the other party, you can consume the corresponding number of accumulated momentum to reasonably change the other party's subjective wish to consent. After entering the infinite battlefield, although Gao Qiang could not see the panel, he could still feel his own miraculous power. That's why he thought of such ridiculous things. I order you to protect me one last time. As the high-pitched voice fell. After a while, the infinite echo in his hand was still silent. Gao Qiang also did not feel any reduction in the accumulated momentum mark in his miraculous power. Sure enough, did he fail again? Gao Qiang sighed heavily. How could he think of such a ridiculous thing to give orders to dead things? The fact that the mark did not even decrease explained everything. However, just when Gao Qiang was discouraged and ready to put aside all distractions and burn himself out, the cry of Yi Meng suddenly came. Gao Qiang, be careful. What? Gao Qiang just turned around and saw a stream of light rushing towards him. In the stream of light, he seemed to see a figure, the predecessor who was called the Entertainment Master by Yang Heng. He smiled at himself. Gao Qiang was pierced by the stream of light. The expected scene of blood splattering did not appear. On the contrary, he felt a miraculous power from the outside world covering his 9th level path. Whatever, big backpack. Introduction. The weight and backpack system are always the pain of every hamster player. How much they long for a miracle to appear one day and expand the capacity of their backpack infinitely. Effect. You can choose any object with capacity and expand its capacity to infinity. How could this miracle respond to my call? Feeling the content of the miracle ability, Gao Qiang's excitement just now was like being poured with a basin of cold water, and it cooled down instantly. Faced with time now, this big backpack is just as useless as his initial ability estimate. He is still doomed to fail. Wait. Gao Qiang suddenly found that the big backpack did not seem to let him choose, but after entering his body, it had already determined the object of expansion. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, Mi Shida Di. Chapter 515. It expands, the insect net. Insect net. Introduction. Do you know the Pokemon ball? Yes, it has nothing to do with that thing. Effect. You can place a life or non-life that cannot resist on this ability, and it will be transformed into your territory. Limited to infinite. Limit 1 of the insect net has been changed to infinite under the effect of the big backpack. Wait, what does this mean? Gao Qiang suddenly reacted and turned his head to look at the long river of time. In the long river of time, countless infinite echoes all produced strange phenomena. They rotated and set off a storm in the long river of time. Then they rushed out of the long river of time and flew towards Gao Qiang's position. Until this moment, the Time Lords who had been acting indifferent finally changed their emotions. What did he do? Why did those losers suddenly react again? This kind of thing should not happen. The Time Lords did not see the scene from the future. And they also knew what the infinite echo that Gao Qiang called away was. It was just a big backpack, a miracle that was like a joke. How could it cause such a large-scale movement? However, at this time, another new infinite echo had arrived in front of Gao Qiang. Good appetite. Introduction, you seem to be able to eat everything, including invisible knowledge. Hunter instinct. Introduction, you will engrave hunting into your instinct, you understand the habits of all prey, and at the same time, every miracle path will unlock new instincts for you. These two infinite echoes obviously came from the same Lord. Because Gao Qiang saw a new ability guided by the hunter instinct under good appetite, the tongue of ridicule. Tongue of ridicule, hunter instinct. Introduction, a good hunter will let the prey approach him actively, not hide, not avoid. These two infinite echoes, like the previous one, rushed into Gao Qiang's body. But they flew to the path called the insect net. In other words, will these two infinite echoes be converted into his own subjects? When Gao Qiang was thinking this way, an extremely familiar voice came from behind him. Wow, Lord, where are you? Sasha blinked and moved closer to Gao Qiang, looking left and right, as if she was curious about everything in the long river of time. Until she saw the countless enemies awakened from the long river of time, each of them looked strange. Sasha swallowed her saliva and rubbed her flat stomach. Why does Sasha feel like she hasn't eaten for a long time? Sasha is hungry. Don't worry, we'll have dinner soon. Juluo's voice came from the side. Gao Qiang looked at Juluo, and Juluo gave him a very different feeling in terms of momentum at this moment. Juluo used to be relatively gentle. But now Juluo exudes a murderous intent that wants to devour everything. This murderous intent is very strong, so strong that people are a little afraid to get close to her. At this moment, Juluo suddenly turned around and smiled at Gao Qiang. We meet again, Lord. Gao Qiang breathed a sigh of relief. No matter what, Juluo is still Juluo. But the arrival of Sasha and Juluo seemed to be just the beginning. Because more and more infinite echoes immediately poured into Gao Qiang's body. One by one, the people who might know each other or just have met once appeared in front of Gao Qiang again. But Gao Qiang found that compared with the time they met before, their momentum was more than a little stronger. It seems that this is also related to miracles. In the past, Gao Qiang only used the power of cause and effect to let them protect themselves, and they could not exert their full power. But now, the way of insect net can allow them to perfectly release their own miracle power. It is equivalent to that Gao Qiang has countless miracle lords under his command in an instant, although they only have the power of a single miracle. At this time, the infinite echoes in Gao Qiang's hand also gradually floated up and entered Gao Qiang's body. Gao Qiang stared at the miracle names attached to the infinite echoes. Further, as this infinite echoes entered the insect net, Gao Yuan appeared again and rubbed his beard on his chin. He, old man, it shouldn't be too late, right? Then Gao Qiang felt the miracle power carried by several other infinite echoes. I think it's okay world ol cause result good luck moment you disturbed me. As several infinite echoes were placed on the insect net in order. The figures of Dakai, 401, Zinki, Zuzu, Qin Sui and Disaster also appeared in turn. Everyone is back. Gao Qiang looked at the figures in front of him who brought him a sense of security, and some tears filled his eyes. So in the end, do you choose to protect yourself again? Oh, it's not in the script again. Zinki shook his head with his hand on his forehead, but a smile that he couldn't suppress appeared at the corner of his mouth. His eyes looked at the enemies awakened by the long river of time. I woke up after a good sleep and saw many old friends here. I feel really honored. Zinki pulled the white gloves on his hands. Then, Lord, if you have any gratitude, please wait until we come back. Now I have to go find my dear old friends and catch up on old times. With that said, Zinki turned into a stream of light and broke directly into the enemy formation in the long river of time. The power of cause and effect is released with every move he makes. Anyone who comes close to Zinki will suffer inexplicable disasters. In response to this, the many enemies on Zinki's path did not dare to block his progress. Zinki's goal has always been clear. In the course of time, those civilizational forces have the most terrifying auras. At this time, Juluo also stepped forward, and from an angle that no one could see, he showed a cruel smile to some existence in time. Chang He. I'm back, it's good to be back. With that said, Juluo also jumped into the river of time. Not just them, almost every territorial citizen has jumped into the river of time again. Each of them has found his or her own counterpart. They were able to defeat each other in the past, and they can still do it today. Suddenly the long river of time has completely gone into chaos. Countless battles were started at the same time in the long river. However, because of this, there are not many people around Gao Qiang who can accompany him to face the Time Lord. Most of them are auxiliary types. For example, the Hukin wrapped in a wolf skin coat. Adequate supplies. Introduction: don't let the three armies march and be stuck for food. Don't let the three armies fight hard and run out of ammunition. Food supplies are sufficient and you can use them as much as you can. Effect: all our supplies are mobilized, regardless of distance restrictions, and there is no need for transportation. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 516. Why are you looking at me? Hyukin shrugged while hiding in her wolf skin coat. I can only guarantee that the front line supplies are inexhaustible. If you want to fight, look at her. Hyukin glanced at Katrina on the side. But Gao Qiang knew that Katrina was not a combat sequence person. Her miracle ability is inspiration. Through inspiration, Katrina can create new miracles. It can only be said that she is also a person with great variance. If there is no inspiration, Katrina may not be able to provide any additional help during the entire war. Seeing Gao Qiang looking at her, Katrina also smiled embarrassedly, clasped her hands together and said, "Sorry, Lord. But I feel that those Time Lords seem to be unable to bear it." Listening to Katrina's reminder, Gao Qiang turned his head and looked at the long river of time. Sure enough, as the awakened beings in the long river of time fell into eternal sleep again, the attitudes of the Time Lords also changed a lot. Now, they suddenly seemed unable to maintain the kind of joking just now. Does this mean that everything that is happening around Gao Qiang is beyond their expectations? At least in the future timeline they see, there should be no such scene now. However, all the advantages that Gao Qiang has gained now are only based on the fact that time has not taken action. Now, time really can't help it. We seem to have accidentally given him too much tolerance, a Time Lord said. Another Time Lord quickly responded. Yes, but what we can give, we can take back. After saying that, he stretched out his hand to grab the long river of time. Under the disturbance of the Time Lords, the long river of time began to riot again. The dream woven by the legacy dream was already riddled with holes. Now the long river of time rioted, and it didn't even last for a second, and it was instantly shattered. As the dream created by the legacy dream shattered, the stone slab that Gao Qiang stepped on also disappeared. All the beings standing on the stone slab fell uncontrollably towards the long river of time. However, as the long river of time began to riot, another batch of deeply buried infinite echoes were shaken out. Ascend to the throne, ever-changing, protect, best power leveling, return. Another infinite echoes merged into Gao Qiang's body. In an instant, a mountain rose out of thin air from the long river of time. Before Gao Qiang could react, he felt that his collar was grabbed by someone, and then the person ran up along the steep mountain wall. In just a few steps, he climbed to the top of the mountain. "Lord, are you okay?" A voice that sounded a little immature came from Gao Qiang's ears. Gao Qiang turned his head to the direction of the voice and saw Bai Hexio scratching the back of his head with a handsome smile. He, it's still my speed, right? Bai, don't tease the Lord." Lian Qian came from behind the two of them holding a folding fan. At this time, Gao Qiang realized what kind of environment he was in now. He stood on the top of a mountain, and those people who almost fell into the long river of time were also brought here by the protruding mountain. The height of the mountain could not be calculated at all. The only thing that could be felt was that it broke through the long river of time, so that Gao Qiang and many Time Lords changed their positions instantly. Walk all over the mountains and the sky, everything is insignificant in the eyes. Lian Qian covered her face with a folding fan, walked to the edge of the mountain, and looked at the Time Lords at the foot of the mountain with contempt. Small, just as small as ants. These remarks were naturally heard by the Time Lords. There are not many beings who dare to call them small. That guy. After a moment of silence, the Time Lords took action. I saw that one Time Lord after another began to stir the long river of time, and countless pictures circled up to the mountain. Yes, it was not the first time that someone called them small. But in the end, time will prove everything. Who is the ignorant and insignificant person? And as the waves of the long river of time came towards Lian Qian and Gao Qiang, who were standing on the edge of the mountain, a rough voice sounded from behind the crowd. Don't be afraid. As soon as the voice fell, Lei Heshuo passed by the crowd and jumped off the mountain, as if he was going to face the surging long river of time alone. I've never been afraid. Lian Qian raised her folding fan and waved it fiercely downwards, and the structure of the mountain changed instantly. Countless cornerstones surged, like the anger of the mountain god, pouring down in a mighty manner, and went to the long river of time with Lei Heshuo's back. Boom! It was originally a silent collision, but the aftermath shocked Gao Qiang's heart. Because the sweep of the long river of time was actually resisted for a moment. I saw countless fragments of the picture floating out and falling back into the long river of time again. But it was only for a moment. Just like the water in the ocean is lifted up and then falls back into the ocean, the river of time will not be harmed by this collision. Why are they so persistent? Gao Qiang finally couldn't help asking. He seemed to feel that after the mountain rose, the Time Lords on the river of time became more active. Lian Qian glanced at her feet and answered with a folding fan, because I let you temporarily escape from the river of time. Can you still move after escaping from the river of time? Lian Qian shook her head. Strictly speaking, no, but my situation is different. In fact, I let us temporarily stand at the top, that is, the top of the long river of time, not outside the long river of time. So our time can still flow. With Lian Qian's explanation, Gao Qiang also understood the current situation. So is this the effect of ascending to the throne? Suddenly, Gao Qiang suddenly realized something. Since he was out of the control of time after ascending to the throne, did he have a chance to win? Thinking of this, Gao Qiang turned his head and asked Lian Qian, do you remember how you failed at that time? At that time, what at that time? This time, when facing Gao Qiang's question, Lian Qian showed a confused expression. I don't remember that I failed. Looking at Lian Qian's expression, Gao Qiang realized one thing. That is, the people here are the embodiment of miracles, but not the embodiment of the ancestors. If Gao Qiang hadn't been chosen by the cause and effect this time, everyone might not have appeared in the form of life. In other words, they don't know why those failed ancestors failed. At this time, it was a Time Lord below who answered Gao Qiang's questions. No one can stand on the top of the mountain forever. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 517. As his voice fell, the temporarily blocked long river of time did not retreat, but continued to wear down the resistance of the mountain. The foundation structure of the mountain began to break, until it fell into the long river of time and disappeared. Gradually, Gao Qiang began to feel that the mountain was getting shorter. So even if Lei Heshuo and Lian Qian tried their best to stop it, it would be impossible to really stop the long river of time from coming once and for all. At this rate, it won't be long before he will be back within the influence of the long river of time. I guess this is the reason why the predecessor failed. How could he use his short peak to challenge the endless time? However, just when everything was about to become a foregone conclusion. Game over. Huan's hero appeared in a corner of the mountain at some point, smiling and showing a small tiger tooth. Different from what Gao Qiang had seen before. Now Huan's hero has a lot of gorgeous gaming peripherals at hand. Taking out the keyboard, Huan's hero pressed the enter key without hesitation. Then do it again. The digitized text time appeared at the junction of the long river of time and the mountain. Then, a click sounded. The time in the text went back 10 minutes. The long river of time that swept in also retreated. Huan's hero sat cross-legged on the ground, swaying her body from side to side, squinting and smiling. Oh, sorry. Personally, I don't accept being stuck. Can you please make way? Your behavior is meaningless, a Time Lord said coldly. If she was in the long river of time, Huan's hero would never be able to retreat so easily. In other words, in the long river of time, she could do nothing, no different from ordinary people. It was because of the blessing of the mountain top that Huan's hero's current move was successful. Then let's see how many times you can interfere with time. As a cold voice fell, the long river of time rose again, trying to swallow the mountain. Although many unexpected things happened. But fortunately, the thing that the Time Lord lacks the least is time. However, just when the long river of time surged up the mountain for the second time, Gao Qiang heard a melodious song, slowly floating in the temple of time. The song was ethereal and holy, making people feel as if their body and mind were cleansed after hearing it. And looking at the source of the sound. Is it Wang Chuan? Wang Chuan, who had not been seen for a long time, was now wearing a white saint's costume, with a 3-no expression, standing by the long river of time and singing. Her lips trembled slightly, as if there were lyrics singing, but they could not be heard by others. That song was not sung for you and me. Katrina walked to Gao Qiang at this moment, looking at Wang Chuan's back, showing an expression of great appreciation. What a great work of art! She is singing for the lost, guiding the way forward for those who have lost their way. If you regard the long river of time as the waters of Wang Chuan, then you will find that this sister is doing something extraordinary. When Katrina's voice fell, Gao Qiang saw a huge fleet crossing the long river of time and entering the temple of time. This is the first fleet of the Supreme Wisdom, and it is about to enter the combat sequence. Please all irrelevant personnel retreat immediately. Repeat, please all irrelevant personnel retreat immediately. After issuing the warning notice, Gao Qiang saw that the fleet attacked the Time Lords without hesitation. This fleet that came out of the long river of time seemed to be stuck in the moment when they received the order and prepared to attack time. If Gao Qiang guessed correctly, they should have been trapped in the long river of time and failed before they really fought with time. But now that they were called back by Wang Chuan, they had a chance to really fight with time. And the song of Wang Chuan has not stopped at this moment. More and more civilizations broke away from the long river of time. They were only confused for a moment, then they confirmed their enemies and took out their own civilization's special weapons for time without hesitation. At this moment, Gao Qiang was not fighting alone. Those civilizations that were once swallowed by the long river of time once again declared their determination to time. The arrival of these civilizations also forced the Time Lords to temporarily move their eyes away from the mountain. But they did not seem afraid. You know, the life that appears here now is just the tip of the iceberg of the civilizations we have dealt with before. As Eternity said this, he disturbed the long river of time. Some of the civilizations summoned by the river of oblivion were swallowed up by the long river of time again. But more of them, including the history of their existence, directly dissipated like clouds and smoke. At this time, Eternity left the battlefield and walked towards Gaoqiang. The long river of time did not follow behind him. Therefore, Eternity was put on the top of the mountain. "What are you doing here again?" Gaoqiang stared at Eternity and asked. At this moment, there were countless people and horses following him, so he would naturally not be afraid of Eternity. However, Eternity once again raised that question. "After so many farces, do you still think you will win now?" "Of course we will win," Gaoqiang said without hesitation. However, Gaoqiang still thought about this issue seriously in secret. Although the situation has completely improved with the arrival of the big guys. But the problem of time has not been solved. Time cannot be killed, time cannot be killed. At this rate. In the best case, Gaoqiang can only end up like the Lord of Cause and Effect. They cannot really defeat time. And the Lord of Time can kill them with his endless time. The Lord of Cause and Effect, who is so powerful, lost at this point. Can Gaoqiang still surpass him? Puff. Gaoqiang suddenly laughed. Because he thought of an absurd way. "What are you laughing at?" Yang Heng seemed a little confused. Gaoqiang turned his head and glanced at Yang Heng. "It seems that your control over the future is far from omnipotent. If you really see every future, then you should run now instead of stopping here." Arrogant Yang Heng said disdainfully. At this moment, Gaoqiang suddenly lowered his head. He shouted loudly to the long river of time, "Everyone, please lend me your power." Eternity looked at the scene with some confusion. But in the next moment, he suddenly felt that he could not see through Gaoqiang. The power of countless miracles was converging towards Gaoqiang. In the long river of time, no one among Gaoqiang's subjects refused to lend their power to Gaoqiang. From this moment on, Gaoqiang felt that his life form had changed. It seemed that he was no longer that cowardly human being, but an aggregate composed of countless miracles. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 518. As the power of miracles increases one after another, the scope of human nature is also compressed to the extreme. Gradually, without Gaoqiang realizing it, his eyes became extremely indifferent. In the eyes of outsiders, Gaoqiang's expression at this moment already resembled that of the Time Lord at the very beginning. Countless miraculous powers gathered in Gaoqiang's body. At this moment, he even felt that he had surpassed the master of cause and effect. It seemed like he could do anything with just a few moves. Because miracles are the power that makes everything impossible possible. No, it should be said that this is the shadow left by our ancestors. At this moment, Gaoqiang has not forgotten what he was thinking before he mastered countless miraculous powers. He looked at the eternity that was so close at hand and launched his edict. "I order, lend me your power." Not satisfied with the power of countless miracles, do you still want the power of time? But, how is this possible? Eternal wanted to mock Gaoqiang's greed. But suddenly he discovered it. He can't do it. I agree. At the moment of eternal agreement, Gaoqiang felt that his life form had undergone a completely new change. In Gaoqiang's eyes, the long river of time became extremely friendly, as if it were his own limbs. But it is completely different from the limbs of living things. Because Gaoqiang can feel that when he obtains eternal power, he is no longer a separate individual. Countless him appeared in the past, present, and future at the same time. If it weren't for the protection of countless miracles, Gaoqiang would have been completely lost the moment he gained eternal power. But now, under the protection of miracles, Gaoqiang can perfectly distinguish which one of himself is located now. Because only now he shows a strong form. In the past or in the future, his form is eternal. Is it some kind of conceptual miracle that fixes the appearance or stabilizes itself? Gaoqiang muttered. It is indeed too risky to obtain eternal power. The life form of time is too special. Fortunately, his ancestors left behind this kind of power, which allowed him to stand firm in the long river of time and not be washed away. But now that we have established a firm foothold, Gao Qiang turned his head and looked towards eternity. Go to hell. In the long river of time, there is no need for two people to repeat eternity. What? Let yourself die? Just as Yang Heng was about to refuse, Gao Qiang felt that all his power to correct himself was drained away. In the end, Gao Qiang heard only one word. Good. The eternal figure dissipated. From now on, there will be only one eternity left in the entire length of time, and that is Gao Qiang. And this is what Gao Qiang did to win. Yes, since time exists forever and cannot be killed. So there is only one way to avoid following in the footsteps of the Lord of Cause and Effect. That is to be time, or at least to be one in time. Obviously Gao Qiang succeeded. Under the protection of countless miracles, he successfully replaced eternity. And, killed eternity. At the moment of eternal death, Gao Qiang suddenly felt that the long river of time under the mountain peak was no longer manic. Countless Time Lords stopped and silently raised their heads to look at the mountain. Their banter and arrogance have disappeared. Just because the current high strength has replaced eternity and become a member of their time. No, even Gao Qiang has more than that. He should be called the Lord of Eternity and Miracles. Since then, Gao Qiang has had endless time, and their methods of consuming the Lord of Cause and Effect will no longer be applicable to Gao Qiang. Meanwhile, eternity is killed and time moves on. This also means that killing them will no longer have an unbearable cost. If a strong person can kill eternity, he can kill them. Even if it's just a short moment. That emotion called fear flashed through the consciousness of many Time Lords for the first time. At this moment, the dream weaved by the wet dream came back with a vengeance. Nourished by the fear of the Time Lords, the new dreamland completely transformed the Temple of Time. Countless ferocious spider faces appeared in the void, and the long river of time lost its trace here. This dream blocked the past and future of the Time Lord. Now they are as powerless as those civilizations that they eliminated at will. However, they were not the only ones affected by this dream. Under the influence of the wet dream, Gao Qiang's newly born divinity gradually dissipated, and his humanity returned again. Looking at the many lords who fell into silence at the foot of the mountain, Gao Qiang couldn't help but smile. After all, it's still the one who inserts the bid and sells the goods. Now he has the ability to kill any Time Lord. Of course, this is not his own fault. Gao Qiang's eyes swept across the Time Lords. Don't you understand the meaning of civilization? As he spoke, Gao Qiang began to talk to himself again. Yes, civilization, from the moment it was born, has been coerced by ever-expanding desires, and ultimately leads to self-destruction. But now, I think I have the answer. The meaning of civilization is inheritance. Gao Qiang said with certainty. For time, they are the endpoints, and the distance from the starting point to the endpoint is out of reach. But countless ancestors left everything they had for me. After they drew my starting line to the finish line, even if they are as weak as me, why should I lose? What do you want? The Time Lord couldn't help but ask. Gao Qiang glanced at the person who made the sound. This is the first time that I ask myself what I want instead of what I want. Sure enough, equal communication can only exist if we stand at the same height. Gao Qiang was not prepared to replace all the Time Lords, so he made his own terms. I want to end all causes and effects. How to end it? A Time Lord asked. Then Gao Qiang stretched out a finger and pointed at his feet. With the present as the boundary, you and I can coexist. For the rest, how about the past belongs to you and the future belongs to me? Suddenly a Time Lord asked dissatisfied questions. Even if you replace eternity, there is only one of you. You only keep the established past for us, but you take away the infinite future. Don't you think it's a bit too much? Gao Qiang glanced at the Time Lord who spoke. How about I don't take away the future, but I take you? Suddenly, the Time Lord who had just spoken fell silent. Gao Qiang pointed behind him and said, besides, I'm not alone. With Gao Qiang's finger, all the people who had originally entered the river of time were brought out and filled the entire mountain in an instant. The Time Lord still didn't respond. Gao Qiang was not in a hurry and just stood on the top of the mountain, waiting silently. Anyway, after becoming eternity, his time also reached infinity. Like every Time Lord, he can afford to wait. Good. I don't know how many years have passed. Suddenly the Time Lord agreed to Gao Qiang's conditions. As the first Time Lord responded, gradually, more and more Time Lords stopped insisting. You and we coexist now, the future belongs to you, and the past belongs to us. We can agree to this condition. Just, hope you won't regret it. After saying that, all the Time Lords left the dreamland woven by the wet dream, and also left the Temple of Time. I don't know how long time has passed, but now the incense in the Temple of Time has long been burned out, and naturally there is no way to stop the Time Lords. They are all gone. Wei Meng came to Gao Qiang's side and confirmed. They're all gone. Gao Qiang looked at the scene at the foot of the mountain where there was now no Time Lord, and couldn't help but sigh. He actually, really won time. However, there is one last thing to do. As he spoke, Gao Qiang's figure flashed, and together with countless other people, he came to a singularity. The singularity looks very small, but Gao Qiang can pick it up with just 2 fingers. But that's where the countless worlds are throughout war games. All cause and effect is over, and this absurd game should also end. After that, Gao Qiang used the power of miracles to forcefully open the singularity. In an instant, countless worlds, carrying their civilizations, returned to the infinite battlefield. This includes the world where Gao Qiang once lived. No one will ever force them to engage in interracial war. Is it worth it? Wei Meng suddenly asked. Now you have replaced eternity. You should understand why time targets those civilizations, right? Because they are afraid that they will have complete control over time, they are afraid that those civilizations will be on an equal footing with themselves, and they are even more afraid that civilizations can threaten us or even kill us, Gao Qiang said. You obviously know. The wet dream murmured. If left unchecked, they will one day continue to grow and threaten the very existence of time. Even, threatening you. Yes, I know everything. Gao Qiang looked into the distance, and the singularity of the war game had disappeared. Countless civilizations are observing their surroundings in confusion, trying to understand the current situation. I don't know if it's worth it, Gao Qiang continued. I just returning the right of civilization to advance to civilization itself, that's all. End of book. This book ends here. Regarding the follow-up daily content, the Emperor plans to present it in the form of extra chapters, and will not put it in such a serious place as the ending. I would also like to thank the tens of thousands of people who follow the update every day and accompany this book until now. It has experienced 9 eras: ancient times, feudalism, mythology, great voyage, empire, post-apocalypse, thousand stars, space travel, darkness, and infinity. I don't know which era you will like more. As for the new book issue that everyone may be more concerned about, the new book of Emperor will be released in about 2 days. The new book will have a different worldview from the old book and will only have extra linkages. Of course, the new book is mainly interesting. For those who are interested in the new book, just pay attention to Dottie's homepage or the extra chapters of this book in the past 2 days. That's right. Now that we've seen the ending, why don't you get a free gift and a good review? Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 519. Lord, Lord, where have you been? Zinky slumped on his desk, staring blankly at the sky and the amount of documents that could almost bury him alive. At this time, the Temple of Time has been converted into the office of the fallen empire. The days after overcoming time are not as easy as imagined. As countless civilizations return to the infinite battlefield. About what attitude should be maintained when facing various civilizations. Such a difficult choice was naturally turned into documents, waiting for Gao Qiang's review. However, Gao Qiang disappeared without a trace at this time. Not only Gao Qiang, but most of the others have also disappeared. Therefore, this heavy burden can only fall on Zinki's hands. Nothing else, just because Zinki has a pen in his hand. Zinki glanced at the invisible pen held in his right hand. Although I have gone through so much, it can still be used after sticking it on. At this moment, the door of the Temple of Time was suddenly pushed open. Zinki instantly raised his head excitedly and looked toward the door. "Lord, are you back?" However, when he saw the figure coming in from behind the door, Zinki's expression instantly froze. I saw Hayukin walking in with a stack of documents that was taller than her. He piled the documents next to Zinki with a clatter. "The Lord is not here, could you please review these documents?" "Ah! Just kill me." Zinki leaned back on the chair, and a translucent mini version of Zinki floated out of his mouth. With quick eyes and quick hands, Hayukin grabbed the floating soul and stuffed it back into Zinki's body. "At least, I have to get all these documents approved before I die." Zinki glanced at the remaining number of files and couldn't see the end. He didn't know if throwing them into the river of time would block the river. These are obviously the Lord's jobs. Zinki scratched his hair frantically. Then, his eyes suddenly looked towards Hayukin. "Can't you help me batch it together?" Hukin immediately crossed his hands and placed them on his chest. "No, Dharma." With his familiar attitude, this was obviously not the first time he rejected Zinki. "Stop pestering me, it's fruitless." With that said, Hayukin exited the Temple of Time, leaving Zinki alone to face the mountain of documents. "What else can I do? Approve it? It would be great if someone could help me get these documents approved." "Anyone can do it." Zinki sighed heavily, and with his crooked handwriting, he wrote nonsense content on the document very perfunctorily. Something seems not quite right." Zinki looked at the narrator. Why did he feel that the narrator was so aggressive today? What does it mean to be crooked? What does it mean to be very perfunctory? What does it mean to be nonsense? Slander, this is pure slander against his great priest. With this in mind, Zinki reached for a document that had not yet been reviewed. He doesn't even know how to get up and go out for a walk. He is indeed a good material for being a social animal. Suddenly Zinki's movements froze. Did two narrators appear at the same time just now? Okay, even a small aside has bullied me. Zinki covered his face, his expression containing 3 parts sarcasm, 3 parts spiritlessness, 3 parts despair, and 7 parts calculation. "First of all, I have to explain that I don't have 1.6 faces." Zinki moved his hand and emphasized. "That's enough for you," the narrator couldn't help but say. "It turns out you can communicate normally." Hearing that the narrator actually started talking, Zinki put down his hand in boredom. "Of course I can," the narrator said angrily. "As a great, almighty, omniscient narrator, there is nothing in this world that I can't do." "Really?" Zinki suddenly became interested. "Then can you help me find where that bastard of my lord is hiding now?" "Certainly." After a while, the narrator coughed twice and said, "The secret must not be leaked. But if you are willing to help me with something, I can exchange this information with you." "What's up?" "Help me find where the protagonist is. I suddenly can't find him." "The protagonist?" The Temple of Time suddenly fell into silence. After another long while, Zinki cursed and started reviewing the documents again. "You don't even know where the protagonist is, so why are you so omniscient and omnipotent?" "What, You don't believe it? The narrator seemed a little anxious because of Zinky's contempt. If you don't believe it, then I'll prove it to you. I heard the narration begin to tell a story in a broadcast voice. Deep in the Temple of Time, the long river of time flows slowly. An ancient being is forced to carry out his daily life as a social animal. But he didn't realize that the pile of documents in his hands was already crumbling. At this point in the story, Zinky realized something was wrong. Because the mountain-like pile of documents really collapsed as the narrator said. Zinky hasn't finished speaking yet. Countless papers fell like an avalanche, swallowing up Zinky in front of the official desk. The ancient existence was eventually crushed by work, and his pen fell into the long river of time and disappeared. When Zinky finally crawled out of the collapsed pile of documents, the invisible pen had already disappeared without a trace, as the narrator said. My pen is gone. Zinky stared at his right hand blankly. Although the invisible pen was almost collapsed, it was still usable after being glued and wrapped with tape. But now that it has fallen into the long river of time, there is really no hope of getting it out. At this time, the narrator, not referring to me, had already disappeared without a trace. You'd better not let me see you again. Zinky cursed fiercely and picked up a document from the document desk. Hey, what is this? Zinky's eyes were instantly attracted by the content of the document. Because there was an invitation letter enclosed here. This is Century Group COA, we create, we observe, observing, we provide entertainment, amuse. Now we are having a big opening sale, and sincerely invite you to come. Shopping. Zinky rubbed his chin and thought for a while, and the corners of his mouth gradually turned up. Master Zinky. Hayukin held a stack of new documents and poked his head out of the door of the Temple of Time. However, all he saw was the deserted Temple of Time and countless unreviewed documents floating in the air. Obviously, Zinky had been gone for a long time. In silence, Hayukin slowly walked forward and threw the documents in his hand into the long river of time. Then he stretched his body. Okay, all the work is done. Let's read a novel for a while. As he said that, Hayukin took out a novel that he had prepared long ago from his wolfskin coat. On its cover was written, Horror game, what's the benefit of you pissing off the narrator to death? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Lord of all people, am I the only one in the fallen empire? Author, MaleProtagonist. Chapter 520. Humming a pleasant little tune, Sasha swung her bare feet back and forth in the long river of time. Although she couldn't touch him, she still enjoyed the current state. Sasha opened her mouth slightly. Julo stuffed a piece of cut meat into Sasha's mouth with helplessness. So why do I have to feed you? Because I'm lazy, Sasha blinked and said confidently. Boom. A violent blow hit Sasha's forehead. No eating today. As he said that, Julo stuffed the plate in his hand into the hands of Gao Qiang, who was watching nearby. Gao Qiang, who was just eating melon, looked at the tray in his hand and was innocently caught in the crossfire. Is he guilty of eating a melon? Seeing Sasha puffed up her mouth, she looked resentful. Gao Qiang quickly threw the entire tray into the long river of time, and then changed the subject. How about we go on a trip? Travel. Julo glanced at the piles of documents in the Temple of Time, and nodded in agreement. It's best not to come back before the next era. You have to go out for so long. Sasha floated in the Temple of Time with reluctance, like a salted fish without dreams. Seeing this, Gao Qiang rubbed his chin, and suddenly an idea came to him. How about we go to the past for this trip? Sasha, don't you want to go and see what you have eaten before? If he remembered correctly, Sasha should have no memory of the past. It just so happened that Gao Qiang also wanted to see how those predecessors failed. Huh. Hearing the word eat, Sasha sat up instantly with energy. What are you waiting for? Let's go. Which one? Zhuo hesitated for a moment, but still asked Gao Qiang, if I remember correctly, you should have the miraculous power to keep the past constant, right? Oh, that one. Gao Qiang raised a finger, that only makes my past unable to be modified. As long as we leave our range, we can actually make small modifications. You mean, if we just go to see the past, it's okay, right? No, I mean this. Gao Qiang stretched out his hand and took out an infinite echo out of thin air. This kind of thing can just be dismantled. Eh, 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 Shasha made a surprised sound. So this kind of thing can still be dismantled. Why are you so surprised? This is the wisdom of our ancestors. Gao Qiang said as he placed what if on the insect-catching net. In an instant, a new figure appeared behind Gao Qiang. It was a young man wearing a light golden gown. The young man's feet were floating in the air, half floating in front of everyone, with a slightly squinting look in his eyes, as if he didn't understand why he was here. Then you look after the house carefully, we will go out to play first. Gao Qiang patted the unknown young man on the shoulder and gave him an affirmative look. Then, in the young man's confused eyes, he took Shasha and Zhuo and jumped down from the long river of time. It was not until then that the young man reacted and stretched out his hand to Gao Qiang's back. Hey, don't leave me alone, I'm scared. However, it was too late. The three had already disappeared in the long river of time. At this moment, the door of the temple suddenly opened a crack. The young man looked back in shock. It seems that someone is coming in. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Got it? It's better to hide. As he said, the young man glanced at the location of the long river of time and wiped out Gao Qiang's trace with a wave of his hand. Don't worry, I will protect you. Squeak. The door of the temple was finally opened. Lord, do you need my help in reviewing documents? Zinky walked in with the invisible pen that had just been glued. I should be able to help a little. Huh. Looking at the empty temple of time, Zinky tilted his head in surprise. Where did the Lord go?